We are joined today by an August panel to discuss 1 year of Kashmir without Article 370. My panel here is made up of some known and some not so known faces, but they are important nevertheless when it comes to any discussion on Kashmir. And I want to start introducing the panel by welcoming Radha Kumar, a noted academic and writer who has worked extensively in Kashmir. Welcome, Radha. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you.
और हमारे दूसरे पैनलिस्ट हैं आज कपिल काक जी, जिन्होंने भारतीय वायुसेना में अपना महत्वपूर्ण योगदान देने के बाद कश्मीर को अपना कर्म स्थल बनाया है. Thank you so much, Kapil ji, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
In this discussion. Then my next panelist is Tarigami Sahib, who is a flag bearer of the Communist Party in Kashmir, and he was also under detention right after the decision to bifurcate the state into two union territories was made. I'm pretty glad that he's out now and he's able to speak to us.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tarigami Sahib.
बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you.
Next on my panel, I have Ratan Sharda ji, who has enlightened the readers of the Quint time and again with his succinct commentary on issues of national importance. And he is going to be joining us in a Quint discussion for the first time. So it's his debut here. रतन जी, आपने एक बात बोली थी कि यहाँ पे 4 versus 1 हो रहा है. But I want to assure you, this is going to be. आप mute है रतन जी. You have to unmute yourself.
In my TV panel of I have faced such barrage of opposition, so I am not really upset. But I think there should be more balance. That's what I felt. We'll know as the discussion moves. It's okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Ratanji. Thank you for making time for this. We were also expecting Anuradha Bhasin to join us, but I'm not very sure what the network situation with her is. And this is time for me to crack a very bad joke because आज राम मंदिर का शिलान्यास भी है और जो कश्मीर में जो राम भक्त है, मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आता कि वो किस तरीके से इस भूमि पूजन को देखेंगे, क्योंकि जैसा हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी कहा है कि राम केवल हिंदुओं के नहीं है, राम केवल एक किसी स्थान के नहीं है, राम पूरे हिंदुस्तान बल्कि विश्व के हैं. तो कश्मीर में तो क्योंकि 4G है ही नहीं, तो वो लाइव ब्रॉडकास्ट कैसे देखा होगा, आई रियली वंडर. एंड उसी वजह से हम तारिगामी साहब को भी नहीं देख पा रहे हैं बिकॉज ऑफ दिस network situation in Kashmir.
Yes.
4G is still not operational there.
Yes. Unfortunately.
Have we lost Radha ma'am as well?
Now, yes, and now we're also joined by our legal editor Bakashta Sachdev, who will also take this discussion forward. I first want to give my panelists 2 minutes each for opening remarks, and I want to start with you, Radha. After 1 year of this momentous historical event with respect to Kashmir, how do you see the nation and the region going forward?
Well, let me begin by saying that for me this is a very sad day. 1 year ago, a state of our country, of our federal union, was had its special status removed. It was divided into two, and it was demoted from a state to a union territory, to 2 union territories. And all of this was done while 6,600 people were put under preventive detention, which include almost all the former elected legislators of Jammu and Kashmir. In other words, all possible dissent was preemptively silenced. To take such very far reaching steps without consultation with the people who are most affected is, to my mind, a really shocking undermining of democracy. And I fear very much that the impact of what was done there is now going to be seen across this country in terms of more and more draconian actions in other states as well. And of course, we've already seen what's happening with youth who protest or dissent. Um, this 1 year has been a year in which, for 2 or 3 months, there was absolutely no communication. There was Section 144. People were not able to voice their opinions. And following that, as you have pointed out, we have seen that when finally telephone lines were restored, they were restricted to 2G. The impact of the 2G restriction by now has been fairly well covered in the media, but we should bear in mind that the worst impact has been for the health and on the education of children. That is something that one should never forget, that bad as it has been for the rest of our children in the rest of the country, for Kashmiri children, for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, it has been really disastrous. Online classes don't work. Teachers are traumatized. And of course, children are hugely traumatized. Similarly, doctors are traumatized because they're not able to get specialist information. They can't keep up with the latest on COVID. Patients are traumatized because they are not able to reach their doctors or perhaps even find it difficult to get to hospitals. Section 144 has been more or less continuously imposed across the valley. 1 year of Section 144, it is really absolutely outrageous. That is supposed to be something that is imposed in rare instances, town by town, village by village. If you feel there is a clear and present danger in those areas, that is not being done. That principle is not being followed. Similarly, I mean, even habeas corpus petitions are taking forever to resolve. The rights to bail are being opposed. The rights to speedy trials are being opposed. It seems that almost every fundamental and democratic right offered under our constitution is being denied. Look at the impact on the economy. I mean, Kashmir was one of our better performing states, according to the Planning Commission, the Niti Aayog as it is now called, just before this lockdown and arrests and changes were wrought on the state. Now look at its situation. Industry estimates that they have lost somewhere around 40,000 crores just in the valley alone. And Jammu, if you look at Jammu and the valley together, you can yourself imagine what the losses have been. Losses of jobs are already 500,000 in the valley. Again, we don't know what the figures for Jammu are. So across the board, we can say we have seen a year of suffering.
Right. I now want to go to Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kar. If you would like to add something to it.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because Radha has done a very detailed exposition on the 1 year that's passed. I would go from the specific to the general. So my meta-narrative starts with the 1 year that has passed. In India's 73 years of independent history, there have been many blots on the face of the body politic. many. But the last 1 year has been the darkest element of the body politic. I see that the Republican values have been upended through this action on the 5th of August, values which are known to everybody here on the panel, including your viewers. And when I look at Kashmir, Kashmir's history has also seen very dark times in the last 73 years. But last 1 year, to my mind, has been the darkest. And the Kashmiris have lost their eyesight because they can't see through the dark. The central dispensation has pushed a dagger into the soul of Jammu and Kashmir, represented by its identity, Article 370. And after having done that over the last 1 year, the heart of the Kashmiris has been packed in bundles of concertina wires, by which everyone here understands what I mean. Rather, has said that the faith of the Kashmir in the Indian political leadership and the judiciary has been shattered perhaps forever. My fourth point is that the political mainstream in Jammu and Kashmir, which has a foundation, the structure has a foundation, the Indian state has dynamited that foundation. The Kashmiri political mainstream has been vaporized with a specific purpose. The words used are, these are dynasts, believe in self-perpetuation. That category belongs to every state of the Indian Union. So what has been said in terms of removing militancy, in terms of integrating Kashmir with India, in terms of development being a priority, rather just now said it was the better performing states. These are the facade. The actual purpose of whatever has been done to Kashmir is ideological. This is an ideological DNA with the ruling dispensation which goes back to 1950, when there was an agitation against Article 370 in Jammu by the Praja Parishad, which is the King's Party, which then became Hindu Mahasabha, then became the Jansa, and then became the Bharatiya Janata Party. I'm not a political animal, but when you look at an issue, a conflict from security and more importantly, comprehensive security perspectives, these are extremely important. And the fact that you said, Nishta, was very, very, you said, how will Ram Bhakts? I'm also a Ram Bhakt. But why do you choose 5th of August, which is the darkest day in the history of India vis-a-vis the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which is a critical part of the Union? And when you've done all this on the 5th of August last year, why does the Ram Janam Bhoomi have to be inaugurated today? And as a matter of disrespect for the Constitution, for a secular, inclusive India, why does the Prime Minister have to do that puja? Why? This is a question I don't find answered.
I will let Ratanji answer to that. But first, I want to extend my very warm welcome to Anuradha. We have had some technical glitches, and which is why she got a bit late in joining us. Anuradha Bhasin कश्मीर की एक एडिटर है और इन्होंने आर्टिकल 370 की एप्लीकेशन के खिलाफ और जो उसके आफ्टरमैथ में जो प्रेस के ऊपर जो दबाव और जो बंदिशें लगी थी उनको लेकर सुप्रीम कोर्ट की तरफ और लॉ का सहारा लेने की कोशिश की थी. थैंक यू वेरी मच अनुराधा जी यहाँ पे हमारे साथ आज जुड़ने के लिए. And I want you to say your quick 1 minute long introduction as to what do you feel. मतलब साल भर एक हो गया है. Has it gone as expected, or did you expect better, or did you expect worse?
I mean, let me not talk about my expectations. Let me start from where we are a year ahead, as the country is celebrating, and as you just spoke about the fusion of the celebration of construction of Ram Temple, coinciding with the first anniversary of what happened in Kashmir last year. Where do we stand today? Kashmir, while rest of the India would be celebrating this move, or at least the government is celebrating, Kashmir is still under curfew. Jammu is under lockdown on the pretext of pandemic, even though the pandemic figures in Jammu are negligible as compared to the national average. So, what has been really achieved? What the stated goals of the government at that time were that this would end terrorism, this would bring equality, this would integrate people. Then why do we have to still keep the people locked up? Yeah, you gave me 1 minute, so that's
Right. Right. Ratan ji?
yeah, you gave me 1 minute, so
Yes, yeah. Ratan Sharda ji, I want you to come in at this point before I go over to Yusuf Tarigami ji. Ratan ji?
And
So, yes, yeah. Ratan Sharda ji, I want you.
there is not a echo.
Wrong with the sound.
Okay, there are three people who spoke before me, and they had certain views which I respect. Now, see the problem. Then it is said that there is a mental problem with somebody who does same thing again and again and expects a different result. For last 70 years, 370 has been played around as the ultimate solution to the problems of Jammu Kashmir. Jammu Kashmir was never normal since 1947 till date. There have been continuously historical violences, historical curfews, 6 years, 8 months of governors who under Congress and the opposition party alliances. So for to say that 70 years Kashmir was another one and the Swarga or the ultimate Jannat of India would be foolish because there were problems. To compare those 70 years of problem and say in 1 year they should be resolved is thinking of the impossible. Situation is so bad. Radha Kumarji talked about trauma. She used the word trauma again and again. She went to, I think she was the one who was part of the interlocutor team, and she never talked about 35A, even her reports. I don't think she even knew about it because Padgaonkar said he didn't know about it. So you had a case of Radhika Gill. Madam, I didn't stop you. I didn't stop you.
I did not make personal accusations.
You were interlocutor, isn't it? In interlocutor report, there was no mention of 35A, no mention of gender inequality, the way women's rights were being exploited or oppressed. There was no mention of this.
Incorrect
This is not fair.
lie.
See how you lose your tolerance when somebody speaks and says something else. That is a problem with
Yes,
the
when
people.
you
think you have the
make
ultimate answer.
interpretation, I will.
You can't listen to the truth. That is your problem. I listened
Excuse
to all
me.
your traumas for
You
4
will
minutes and
be
you
in
cannot speak. Sorry,
interlocutor
Nisha, I can
for 5
This is the
pages
tolerance you
on
have
gender.
for counter view.
You
I'm
have
very
not
sorry.
read it and you are saying
It's
stuff
very
about
sorry
it.
that you
That
belong
is
to a
not
team
applicable.
which made a report which had no sense at all, and today you're telling me not to speak. Are you afraid of the truth?
I
Are you
am
afraid
not
of the truth?
afraid of anything. What I find
So don't
objectionable
interrupt me.
is
You have an
that
answer,
you
give me
are
logical
saying
answer.
things about a
You have
report
an answer,
that
give
you
me logical
obviously
answer.
have
Did I
not
attack you
read.
personally?
You have alleged,
I had
you
talked
have
about an
alleged
interlocutor
that
role.
there is
I did
nothing
not
of
talk about you
gender.
personally.
That is a lie.
I think
Take back
Nisha,
your
you are
lie.
losing the plot. I think she has no
We
patience for
have to
counter
pick
view.
up the
I
She
have
thinks it's her
established
feet,
a
she can
lie.
speak anything.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not that way.
That is a lie.
It's not the way.
You
You
lie.
may be highly learned,
You
you may be
lied
academic, you don't have
in
right to
public
oppress
for
other
an
views.
open
You
forum.
don't have right to oppress or
Take back your
tolerate
lie.
other
Okay,
views.
let's just take this down a notch further. There are two things which I think we need to do right now. One is, I think,
No, you can't
number
control
one-
my words. 4 people spoke. I just started. You started
Mr. Shada,
interrupting me.
Mr. Shada,
I can
we're
walk
just-
out.
I'm
It's not the way to
Mr.
conduct the
Shada,
debate.
Mr.
I'm
Shada,
sorry, you're
I
not
am
here to
just-
tell me what to speak.
just for a moment.
Shada, please go
You
ahead.
can't make me notch down because 4 people spoke before me, and I am making a point. You want me to stop from speaking because it doesn't suit your narrative. Then have your family party and I will leave.
Okay. Can we do something very simple here? Radha ma'am, why don't you, we're going to give you a rebuttal on these
Yes.
exact points. I
She
think
has no
immediately.
patience. She's so afraid of the truth.
Mr. Sharda for a moment, please. So rather than like, especially if there are factual things you want to raise, specifically we like that we raise immediately after this statement by Mr. Sharda. Mr. Sharda also, if we can be, we're just, more sensitive in terms of the language we use to other members on the
What is
panel.
wrong, what is wrong with the language?
That is all.
She
That is
spoke
all.
of trauma. I spoke of trauma of SC/ST people.
And
I
exactly,
spoke of the trauma of the
no
women who
personal
had no
comments
equal
to
rights.
any of the
What is
others.
wrong in that?
We can now return
I
to
was
the.
going to speak out people who came after partition never got
Go
citizenship
ahead.
for 70 years. What is wrong in that?
Mr. Sharda, please go ahead. It's all right. Please
No,
go.
you want to disturb my whole your line of argument.
No, please go ahead. No, we are willing to listen to what you have to say, sir.
No, Radha Kumar is no god. She has no right to interrupt me just because I'm saying something she doesn't like.
It's okay. We can move past.
Guys, you should be interrupted and corrected. You told lies about our interlocutor's report. Lies
Brother,
are-
let him finish first, and then you get your rebuttal. Thank you. We're not doing a TV style debate here.
Yes, so she has. That's what she did. I listened to all the panelists quietly, and I just started making point. And you said it's a TV debate.
We expect everybody to please listen to Mr. Sharda, and then whatever objections there are, please wait for your turn to raise those issues. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Please go ahead, Mr. Sharda.
Because I have to respond to three people. Remember this.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I said there was trauma of women's rights, which we didn't bother for 70 since 1982 the new Citizenship Act came. There was trauma for SC/ST people who were not given the citizenship right, who could become a Safai Karmachari instead of doing PhD. We never thought about that. We never paid attention to the orphans of partition, lakhs of them, without roof, without land for 70 years under the guise of 370. So this is the trauma I'm talking about. None talked about trauma of the Kashmiri Hindus being thrown out of Kashmir, and nobody talked about that. So that is not a trauma. You talk of human rights. You talk of terror. What was the terror of the people who suffered all this? Is Jammu not happy? Ask people in Jammu, have an opinion poll. Ask Ladakh whether they are not happy with what is happening today. So is it not right to say that many people are happy? Mr. Kar brought in ideological. Yes, 370 was a screen for which is actually tribute to two nation theory. When you have spatial law of 370 for Jammu Kashmir, because there's Muslim majority, you bow down to two nation theory. That is my contention. He talked of ideology. Those people who talked of integration of Jammu Kashmir with India are called communal. Those who want special status of Kashmir are called secular. What kind of definition are we talking about? Yes, Jammu Kashmir is not a fight for autonomy. It is not a fight for rights. It is a fight for jihad. It's a fight for Islamization of Jammu Kashmir running through Pakistan, through various agencies all these years. This started in 75, went on till now. So the people who thrown out on that pretext only, all the agitations are done on that pretext only. Yes, it's ideological, and we have to fight this urge to take away Kashmir from India, because Kashmir has 4,000 years of Hindu heritage which nobody talks about. So all these people sitting here must realize there is a long history to persecution, long history to what is happening for last 1 year. It will take time, but this is the right step. We must try something different. If the earlier thing has not done anything, you had interlocutor report. What happened to that? Nothing, because we are going back to same and same formulae, same Abdullahs, same Muftis, same group of people who have same views, who are guided by Pakistan. So when you become government, you support India. When you sit in opposition, you oppose India. So you bribe people to support you. Bribe will not do. Kashmir cannot be taken out of India, because that will approve of the two-nation theory, which will never allow. And the Kashmiri Hindus are part and parcel of the land. Unless they go back, there is no right to anybody. There is no talk of equality or justice for anyone.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sharda. Now I want to bring Mr. Tariq Ami in, because यहाँ पे कुछ बात हो गई है आइडियोलॉजी की, चाहे वो हिंदुत्व आइडियोलॉजी हो या एक इस्लामिस्ट आइडियोलॉजी हो. And being a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, I expect you to shun both these religious identities. I mean, in keeping with your party, with your political ideology. And
Nishta, my objection was to treat 1952 agitations as communal agitation. That was my objection.
Now, Yusuf Tarigami ji.
Thank you for providing me this opportunity. I have heard all the panelists almost for a while, and I hope they will give me a few minutes to talk about the issues, because right now I'm speaking from Srinagar itself. And I must request Ratanji, we are here to debate the issues which confront our people of India, which confront our future not of only Kashmir, but the entire country as a whole. And there is no solution to our problems. Anger finally leads us to somewhere which is nothing but sadness, darkness, as we are facing today in Kashmir. I must introduce myself, not just only I am a flag bearer of Communist Party, I am besides that a citizen of this great country as well. It's not that I'm just discussing the issues, I have gone through the process. Right from 67, as a young boy till now, gone through the draconian laws like preventive detention, public safety acts, defense of India rules. And then during this turmoil, I must just introduce myself to my friend Ratanji, that I was the first migrant in 89. My Pandit brother, which he calls Hindus of Kashmir, they are mostly called Pandits of Kashmir. I was the first person in 89, they came in 90. I know here that was the part of the tragedy which Jammu Kashmir has been witnessing, undergoing since so many decades. And they have lost their home, they were forced to leave. I understand their pain. I really feel so sad about, upset about. And for me, there will be an ईद होगी तब, बल्कि सबसे बड़ा मंजर मेरी नजरों में सामने आ जाएगा जब मेरे पंडित बरादरी के भाई बहन अपने घर वापस लौटेंगे, अपने घर, उनको किसी सिफारिश की जरूरत नहीं है. They have suffered, yes, but then Kashmir on the whole overall has suffered. We have lost many friends, many colleagues. This is the tragic story. Let us not divide the people on the basis of the tragedies. Tragedies should unite us for future building process. Tragedies should not be used as political tools. Tragedies should not be used as dividing tool. But besides that, what happened last year? I disagree with my honorable friend Ratan that it has been a problem since 1947. Yes, which part of the country has not faced the problems? There have been agitations, there have been disturbances, there have been violence. Which part is there? Which has been? Anyway, Kashmir has greater part of sufferings. Yes, I do agree. But it is Kashmir. I must just remind my friends elsewhere. It was Kashmir when the country got divided. Of course, on the basis of nation theory, on the basis of rigidities from the political leader. And finally, the result was the huge sufferings on both sides of the people. People got massacred. Even in Jammu, my Jammu, the part of Jammu and Kashmir, suffered hugely because of lorry violence. But fortunately, it was one piece. Now, piece of land, but don't reduce it to that level. I appeal to you. It still remains a pillar of modern, the future of my country. This is my dream. What is that dream? That dream is that not a single communal incident took place. There was no Indian army at that point. Not at all. There were only people. They defended it. That's why Mahatma Gandhi, I don't know, whether he remains Mahatma for everybody today or not, Bapu for today. But he said that if there is somewhere any idea which can be envisioned for future India, that's in Kashmir. That's it in Kashmir. What went wrong? Who destroyed that Kashmir? One. Second is, my friend should look into the history. When Maharaja Hari Singh was reluctant, I put it, he was reluctant, who was supported by Arja Parishad, who was supported by other organizations as well. He was reluctant to accede to India. Please go through the pages of history. It is only when the raiders from Pakistan came that he asked for more troops to support him. And then only instrument of execution. He was not Sheikh Abdullah who was reluctant. He was not anybody from the valley who was reluctant. It was Maharaja Hari Singh. Number one. Don't make it Hindu-Muslim. And even at that point of time, Arja Parishad was not distancing itself from Maharaja. This has happened. And I must remind my friends elsewhere in the country as a whole, it was Jammu and Kashmir, despite being Muslim majority state, bordering with Pakistan, not only Muslim majority area like Hyderabad, but bordering with Pakistan, rejected the option of Muslim Pakistan. Rejected and joined India, which promised to build its future on secularism, on progressive lines, on plurality. This is the uniqueness in the situation, historical uniqueness. Please note it down while discussing Kashmir. It's not the question of scoring the points. Kashmir belongs to me, it belongs to Ratanji, it belongs to everybody. The same is true about in the rest of the country. I cannot surrender my rights to any political party which may be bigger in size today. They don't have the monopoly.
Right.
Please give me the consent, I will leave.
Okay.
So my point is, what has happened? I want to remind my citizens, including my esteemed friend Ratanji, what happened on 5th of August is not just something attack on Kashmir. It is an assault. It's a strike against the very foundations of Indian Constitution, Indian federalism, Indian secularism. Again, and one more, it's an assault on the very foundations of the relationship between Jammu and Kashmir and Union. The relationship built up by our people, by our soldiers, by our patriots belonging to different community. This is an assault on those sacrifices, on those foundations. Please look into this before it is too late. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Tariq Abi Sahab. Now I want Bakasha to point, to point some questions at some of our panelists. Bakasha, would you like to go?
Have you forgotten my right of rebuttal?
Yes, certainly. Rather, we're going to come back to it.
When?
Bakasha, unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
Right. So Radha, that I was literally. So my question was going to be for you, but I actually want that to be a follow up to your rebuttal on this point. Now, there was a specific allegation made that when the interlocutors went to Kashmir earlier, they failed to look at issues of gender rights or issues of caste, and these were serious problems which had been persisting in Kashmir for a long time, which justified the usage, justified the abrogation of Article 370, the removal of Article 35A. Now, what I'd like you to talk us through is these specific points. Was there no attempt? One, what was said in your report about these issues, if it was, and B, what was the situation on these issues according to you, and whether those required something as drastic as an abrogation of Article 370 to address them?
Well, first of all, effect on women's rights and on gender.
Brother, louder, please. Louder. Yeah.
First of all, we had several pages of discussion on women's rights and gender issues. And we did make some recommendations, especially, of course, to the then existing State Commission for Women, as well as to the National Commission for Women. I think one or two of the things that we suggested were taken up, but I cannot say that they were pursued in the way that we would have liked them to have been. Now, on some of the other issues that Mr. Sharda touched upon, I'm actually quite amused and pleased to say that it appears that this government has, in fact, acted on some of our recommendations. We had certainly said that the rights of West Pakistani refugees should be recognized and that they should have the same types of access to education and opportunities, and consideration should be given to giving them permanent residence certificates. So here's just a very clear point that I hadn't actually thought of, but it appears the BJP government has acted on one of our recommendations. Some other recommendations of ours, amnesty for first-time stone pelters and so on, were also acted on. Now, as a policy person, it is my experience that almost every government cherry picks what they want to act on and what they don't want to act on in a report. I've rarely seen any government act on the entire gamut of recommendations in a report, though that would obviously be a preferable situation because mostly recommendations are interlocking and they therefore work best when movement is made on all of them together at the same time in parallel tracks if necessary. Bakasha, you had a separate question apart from this about our report. Yes, the connection to 370. Now, 370, what was left of 370 was 35A. When we talked in our interlocutors report about 370, we were not addressing only what was left of it. We were saying that you must go back to what you had promised in the instrument of accession. Do not forget that 370 comes out of the instrument of accession, which was the legal document that bound Kashmir to the Indian Union. What the Maharaja had insisted on in the instrument of accession was that apart from security, which is defense, foreign affairs, and communications, all other issues affecting this be decided by the representatives of the state themselves. So he had made a kind of distinction between of policy the federal union would deal with and which would remain the rights of the state. 370, therefore, was in some ways a codification of that promise that had been made. 35A then followed when the elements of which portfolios would go in which hands were worked out between the representatives of the government of India and the representatives of the government of Jammu and Kashmir. So all of locking amongst themselves. The 370, the state government from making reforms which the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as any should, did not stand in the way. 370 did not stand in the way of the defense of Jammu and Kashmir. In fact, the state government agreed that counterinsurgency could also be conducted by the Indian armed forces and Indian security forces, though normally insurgency is regarded as more of a state law and order problem. So in this instance, you actually saw more rights in defense and security being given to the Union authority, even with the existence of 370.
Right.
What was important about 370, I would say most important, were 2 points. One point that it flowed from the instrument of accession. In other words, it put the agreements that were under that instrument into the Constitution of India. This is legally absolutely necessary. And that if you take away 370 instrument of accession, is an issue heard by it's not has in any way been resolved as yet. The second important point about 370 was that because the instrument of accession specified these terms, it became a identity for Kashmir and to some extent part of the former princely state. It also, of course, kept open the whole issue of how do you deal with Pakistan held parts of the former princely state. So it allowed, if you like, access to the Pakistan held parts as well, instead of drawing a line which would not allow you to go into issues affecting those areas. Those would be my 2 key points. One last thing I would like to say on this is that, though I think Kapil would probably prefer to address it, nobody.
We would love to see Kapil for this.
No, what is, let's hear what Kiran said.
Nobody forgets that Kashmir, the valley, was Hindu, was Buddhist, and then Muslim. Nobody either there or who works on or is interested in Jammu and Kashmir ever forgets that. That is a key informant of all policies, and indeed it has been the key informant of pluralism and inclusivity. Kashmir, when Mahatma Gandhi, as Tarigami Sahab referred to Mahatma Gandhi, when he talked about seeing a light from Kashmir, he was talking precisely about the pluralism and inclusivity of the religious traditions of Jammu and Kashmir. Read the Nilamata Purana, see what is the Hindu inclusivity there and what you have done here. Look at the
Thank you, ma'am.
contrast.
Mr. Shada, I've got a question which I want to raise on some slightly technical
I thought I
aspect.
was I given the floor and I was about to speak when. Oh, okay, no problem.
So we'll be having a specific question which we'll bring to you. So we're just taking some specific questions up, and given what Radha ma'am has just spoken about some of the issues, is why I'd like to sort of take this next question to Mr. Sharda because of what he said and what she's also said here. Now there are 2 points which I wanted to just run by you, Mr. Sharda. Number one is you raised the issue of women's rights, and this was obviously part of the petitions in the Supreme Court. However, in 2002, the Jammu and Kashmir Court had already Article 35A residency prevented women from their permanent residency if they married outside. It struck sort of different conditions. The government there had filed an appeal in the Supreme Court. That appeal was actually withdrawn, Mr. Shada. So, at this point of time, given the High Court's decision, would you not agree that there was no specific challenge to women's rights in Jammu and Kashmir when it comes to the LGBTQ rights? In fact, for instance, the Supreme Court had held previously that once as a judgment by Justice Nariman, that once the Supreme Court makes a ruling on a similar provision of say the IPC, even if that is not separately made in as an amendment in Kashmir, that would still apply in Kashmir if it deals with an issue, a key issue of fundamental rights. So, would you say that you still believe that there were issues of, say, gender rights which were not being dealt with, which were not applicable under Indian law to Jammu and Kashmir with Article 370 still around?
See, what was done after the judgment of High Court was to dilute the rights of the women from very bad to a little bad, because they could own the property till they were alive. After they died, their property could not be passed on to their husbands or to the offspring. So it was not complete freedom that you talk about. It was only partially restored. Secondly, there is a myth that Maharaja Hari Singh opposed the accession. He wrote a letter in July 1947 asking for accession. It is on record. Thirdly, the instrument of accession that was signed by Jammu Kashmir was exact replica that was signed by every other princely state. There was no condition at all. 370 was brought much later. There was no reference to 370 in the article of accession, and that is it was supposed to be passed by other Constituent Assembly of Jammu Kashmir, accepted the accession. So you cannot argue about that. Once you accepted the accession, you cannot argue about it. There was also talk about one more thing was there about this rights that the Radhaji said very well that these rights should be given to women at scheduled tribe. People tried. Ghulam Nabi Azad tried. He had to resign and lose his job because everybody opposed it. The even normal identity card for refugees of Pakistan who came to Jammu Kashmir were not allowed. So this was possible only after the government took a firm stand against Article 370. So as I said, 370 was a screen behind which every kind of atrocity on Ladakh and Jammu was done. Interlocutor team had 3 roundtables, 2 in Kashmir, 1 in Jammu, none in Ladakh. Was Ladakh so useless that you did not go there? Then coming to the other thing. Just a moment, Radhaji, your habit of interrupting.
You cannot.
You are not a teacher here, Radhaji. You are not a teacher. You're not a teacher.
I am a person.
Rebut me later.
In fact.
Rebut me later.
No, there's no
Out
question
of
rebutting
52
later.
years,
When
there
you
was not a
die, you
single
will be taken up immediately.
Radhaji,
Either you stop
I will not
lying.
concede floor to you.
Stop
We
lying.
have no right to keep on
You
interrupting.
are lying and you
For
are
52 years,
deliberately
in
lying.
Kashmir, there was
If you
not a
were
single
not
Buddhist for
deliberately
52
lying, you
years.
could ask me to
Out of
correct.
5,500 Buddhists, there was
Again,
in
I'm
Central
saying that-
Secretary, there was not a single Buddhist. Out of 97, 98 batch of Kashmiri executive officers, 3 Muslims, 1 Christian, 23 Buddhists passed. Only 1 Buddhist got a job. So it is not question of communalism. It is question of Kashmir Valley politicians trying to monopolize, trying to oppress all other territories. That was at the root cause how 370 was used and misused.
Right. And so I'm going to make just one more question, which I think will then open up the floor to the other panelists as well. Is that there are
And
two
just a
aspects.
moment, one last point from Mr. Tariq Ahmed. He said there were no riots ever. 1931, don't forget, 1931 riots were engineered led by Sheikh Abdullah himself. Please check out. And he was in jail before he was brought out and given the charge of Jammu Kashmir. Let us not forget that. So he was facing charge of treason because he led riots in 1931. And that was during Maharaja's time when he was nobody and he wanted to become a leader.
So, Mr. Shada, so I'm going to ask a question here, which I'm hoping is going to open this up and I want to take this up for the rest of the panel as well. There are 2 aspects to the decision 2019. One was the to get Article 37 decision, which for your arguments, we've heard arguments of why it was not. aspect of it, the method used to do it. What was required to do this here, according to what was there in the Constitution, was under Article 373, subclause 3, it said that you have to have a statement from the Constituent Assembly to revoke or modify the terms of Article 370. Article 370, paragraph an aspect of applying provisions of the Constitution, other provisions of the Constitution, with again the consent of the Legislative Assembly. Now, none of those things were applicable here because the Assembly itself was dissolved. It had been dismissed. There was no session sitting there. It was therefore done all through the government and through the Parliament of India, not through any representatives of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this is a key aspect of the challenges in the Supreme Court. My question to you is, you have obviously argued why you think it was a necessary thing to be done. Do you agree that the method followed was correct, or do you think it would have been more appropriate to reinstate a legislative assembly and then go about this procedure?
I'm very sure the president, the home minister, and the prime minister paid enough attention to the legal side of this entire exercise. It has now been supersede the Supreme Court's right to respond to what is purely a legal issue. I just talked about the political necessity of why it did not work earlier on, so we had to find a new solution. As far as legality is concerned, that is to be answered by the Supreme Court, by the lawyers, and I'm sure they have taken care. And so far, in the first round, the Supreme Court didn't go against it. It allowed the law to prevail, and now there the petition be checked. No issue.
Prakasha, may I come in and pose a question to Anuradha here because the question of legalities and the manner in which the changes were brought in and their impact. Anuradha is a first-hand person that we have here who can give. Has Anuradha left? Okay, she may have dropped off because of connection issues. Anyway, thankfully we have Tariq Abi Sahab here because a petition against his detention was also filed by the party head. So I would like to hear his comments on the manner in which it was brought in. Tariq Abi Sahab, very briefly. Can you hear me?
Tariq Ahmed Sahab is also not here.
Has to switch on the mic. No, he has to switch on the mic. He hasn't switched on the mic.
Can you please switch on your mic? You are on mute.
I think you. Because you
Okay, Kapil ji, please go ahead. I mean, the floor is all yours.
Since you have raised some issues, I would like to bring this, with your permission, as the anchor. What was subject of this discussion 1 year after 5th of August?
Right.
I'm afraid we are completely derailed. We are talking about 31, 47. I'm glad you haven't gone to the 5,000 years of Kashmir's history, of which I am a part. I am part of a continuous 5,000 years of Hinduism in Kashmir. So I think, if you permit me, I will take no more than 2 minutes. I have the highest respect for every panelist, but I would like to state some factual errors which have crept into our narrative. Number one, there were no riots in 1931. What happened in 1931? There were Kashmiri Muslim agitators who went to the central jail because there was an action which was taken against one of their compatriots. And following that action, this was an agitation against the Maharaja. It was an agitation which could have taken part in any part of India, because that time, there was a freedom movement in India also. So a state at that time, which was independent in every sense of the term, people went against the Maharaja. After that, and I think here Ratan Sharda ji is right, there was a minor attack on some Kashmiri Pandit shops. And this was because Kashmiri Pandits were part of the Maharaja's administration. being educated, being literate, far more economically advanced than the Kashmiri compatriots Muslims. That was all about 1931. On the 1947 instrument of accession, I'm afraid again a falsehood has come in. Truth is, yes, the instrument of accession was identical to the instrument of accession signed by 365 princely states. No doubt about it. Shah Dalji is right. But I would request him and urge him to go with the attaching two documents with that instrument of accession, in which the Maharaja of Hari Singh laid down conditions under which that accession was provisional, and that he would retain all elements of sovereignty till such time this accession was provided for in the constitutional rearrangement between India and Jammu and Kashmir. So this is the second point. Third point is I was so disappointed. Then 1 year after 5th of August, not a word has been said about the internationalization of Kashmir. This is a serious issue. And if the Indian public policy will be impacted negatively in the months and years ahead, I'm sorry, it will be by the internationalization factor more than any other factor. I don't want to elaborate and hog all the time, but I would like to say that Kashmir issue was last discussed at the United Nations in 1965. 1965.
It's in 94.
You don't have to, can you kindly, you'll get time again. It was not 65, okay, 71. It has not been Gunnar Yaring, if Mr. Sharda has heard of that name, in 1957 said that United Nations, he was the chairman of the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan. Please Google Gunnar Yaring statement 1957. He says UN has now no role in the Kashmir issue because this is in 1957. Thereafter, a Secretary General of the United Nations said the same thing sometimes in 2000, which is 20 years ago. So I think the issue that has come to the fore after 5th of August last year is that we have internationally now the famous Indian inclusive, democratic, caring, accommodative model of nationhood, which everybody wanted to embrace, is now under question. There will be some pressures. We have lost a very valuable friendship with Bangladesh. It's still under pressure, although efforts are being made to undo the damage that's been done. Malaysians are now out on a limb. Turkish, who were never friendly with us before, in any case, are now our sworn enemies. And as for the rest of the people, I only need to remind Mr. Sharda, since he nods his head so often, please read 4 major news breaking media in the United States over the last 1 year. The Indian model and Indian management of Kashmir has come into serious question. My last but one point, can we look what is done now and how will it pan out with regard to the points that were made earlier? Work is in progress on domicile law. May I remind everyone that the Ladakhis are up in arms that there is no domicile law for Ladakh. Jammu is looking at a domicile law in opposition to their earlier stance that they were great advocates for removal of Article 370 and 35A. I will give you a statistic which will help you. Jammu applicants are 20,000 for domicile in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, in Jammu. There are only 5,000 applicants for Kashmir. Quite a few of them, hundreds of them, are people who have been Kashmir earlier. On the issue of, most important issue of delimitation, I want to ask, you're asking all the questions, I want to ask the panelists and the anchor. There is a unanimous decision of the Government of India that delimitation all over India will take place in 2026 on the basis of the census of 2021. Farooq Abdullah at that point of time had said we will go along with what has been decided by the government. I want to know from people who are more knowledgeable than me, why was the hurry to bring forward the delimitation to now and what? Please hear this. On 2011 census, I mean, this can only indicate that there are intentions which are not honorable. My last point, I promised that I'll say the last point, and that is on the question of what is happening on the ground on a day-to-day basis. It is earlier any armed forces. I've spent 40 years in the armed forces. I'm a proud airman of India. I've taken part in two wars, 65 and 71. I've done bombing missions both in the western sector and the eastern sector in 71. So nobody needs to teach me nationalism. But I'd like to suggest we now have a situation by the amendment that has been made that the security forces can go select any area under the category of strategic consideration without the earlier policy of seeking a very basic step in a democratic setup of seeking the concurrence of the Home Department, because there is an administration which runs the state. So I think if I look ahead, unless and until we undo bulk of what has been done last year, unless we take into account the dark mood that prevails all over the Kashmir Valley, in fact, many areas of Jammu as well, in which case we are heading for a suicidal path as a nation, notwithstanding what the government or the ruling dispensation makes things out to be. Thirdly, unless we reach out, I would like to mention, people say that so much terrorism has gone down. I will quote you Ministry of Home Affairs figure, and Ratanji, kindly make a note. In terms of the success in fighting terrorism, Home Ministry says from 1st of Jan 2019 to 31st of December 2019, there were 157 terrorists who were killed, of whom 125 were local Kashmiris. Watch that figure, analyze that figure. It also says that from 1st of Jan until 15th of July, 136 terrorists were killed, of whom 121 were Kashmiris. What it brings out, and it's not rocket science, that Indians are killing Indians in Kashmir in the name of development, in the name of counter-terrorism, and in the name of integrating Jammu and Kashmir with India. Only one clarification in terms of the 370 approach. The point was made that Jammu and Kashmir was all the time for retention of Article 370. I'm afraid historically that's not correct. May I clarify? In 1950, 1 year after the Indian Republic was founded and Article 370 was incorporated into the Indian Constitution, there was an agitation this time led in Jammu by an outfit called the Praja Parishad. Ratan Shardaji would have heard of Praja Parishad. It was led by a gentleman called Premnath Dogra, and the Praja Parishad subsequently transmuted into Hindu Mahasabha, then to Bharatiya Jansan, and eventually to Bharatiya Janata Party. So if there is any element which opposed 370, it was the elements in Jammu. And those transmuted over the years and have come to the current moment. I would also like to say that wisdom is extremely crucial. Only one sentence, I'm sorry if I've taken so much time. There was a Bharatiya Janata Party in power.
I have no idea. I don't.
For 5 years,
Me when
from
you should.
1999
I don't think that there's any chance to it. I don't
If
think we
ideology was a determinant, why didn't Atal Bihari Vajpayee remove Article 370? Why did he, as a counterpoint to removal of Article 370, actually move forward as a true strategist, not as a political leader? He rose above petty politics to be a strategist. And I would like to bring to your notice statistical facts again, no emotions and bickering at each other.
Admiral Khan, can we
4,500 people
please come back
died
to this?
in 2000. 4,500 people died in. These are figures of Home Ministry. They died in 2003. Maximum casualties. By 2013, thanks to Atal Bihari Vajpayee's peace process from 2000 to 2008, the numbers came to 100. 100 from 4,500. These statistics show that if we take a forward-looking approach to management and resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir issue, we will look forward to some peace and tranquility. I'm sorry I have taken more time than this.
I'm here. I'm here now. Can I speak for a while?
Before you come in, Tarigami sir, just 10 seconds of factual corrections.
All right, Mr. Sharda.
Last- Yeah, just no theory, just practical points. 1994, UNSC had a huge debate on Kashmir issue, which Kapil Kantji has not mentioned. He said nothing happened after 1970, 1994. When entire country, Narasimha Rao, Vajpayee, Khurshid, everybody went there and fought it out. As far as Turkey is concerned, it is running to become a
You're talking about United Nations Human Rights Commission.
Sir,
Sir,
UN,
please, for God's sake,
UNSC
say
doesn't
facts.
matter. No.
Don't lie, sir. Sir, don't lie. This was a United Nations Human Rights Commission.
It
It
is
is
a
not
nice speak, it is
BA.
a lie.
If I may point out, it is the 1994 resolution.
Last point.
Full debate.
Everyone,
Last point.
no, on a factual point, it is the United Nations Human
Last
Rights
point.
Commission, not the General Assembly, which passed. the
Yes.
That's
resolution.
right. And so why is he talking
3.7.
nonsense?
3.7 lakh.
We are talking about United Nations General Assembly. United Nations.
We've already clarified that. Mr.
Just
Sharda,
a moment.
you have another
3.7
factual
lakh.
point.
3.7 lakh people have got domicile, not just some thousands. Out of which 78% are from Jammu region. This is the official figure. 3.7 lakh people have got domicile. Out of which 78% come from Jammu. This is not my figure. This is the press figure coming from government.
No, may I correct you there? These are people who were already permanent residents of the state. These are not new domicile applicants.
Okay.
So all of your facts need to be further clarified. Please.
And
You also do that.
These are all permanent residents. Like I am
Okay. Everyone, please. We need to maintain a certain level of. Everyone needs to maintain a certain level of
completely off kilter and very immature.
Marshal Kak, if we
This
can
is not fair.
now,
Mr. Khan, this is not fair.
I think we now.
You ask people not to make personal comments. I said I respect you, call me immature. This is the level of debate you have gone into.
I think this needs to be taken down.
I have to be given a few seconds.
Yes, we need to now hear from Mr. Tarigami.
We have to listen to Mr. Tarigami. Rest of you, please. Yeah.
You see, you had asked me the question about the methodology, about how it was done, whether it was legally, morally correct or not. My opinion is it is for the first time in the history of independent India that the future of the people of a state has been decided without any reference to their opinion or giving them a chance to debate and discuss their own future. What does it mean? It sets a dangerous precedent. Any state can now be dissolved and made into a virtual colony of the central government using its majority in the parliament. And it constitutes an assault on the very federal structure of the constitution. हम पर क्या गुजरी तो वो तो गुजरी और ये सिलसिला आगे बढ़ा और रियासतों का क्या होगा आने वाले वक्त बताएगा. This is one. These are not just, don't make it. I will Sharda ji ko my request, please don't make it Muslim versus Hindu. We have enough of it now. I don't need any clarification from anybody to suggest how Kashmiris behaves at the time of crisis, critical moments. I'm talking of Kashmiri. Kashmiri a Muslim, Kashmiri a Hindu, Kashmiri a Sikh, even our brethren in Jammu and Ladakh as well. But the treatment, earlier governments have done what they did, and many a times they have committed mistakes as well. I must say, I must accept this reality that Kashmiri history has been a history of broken promises. We never expected this. And it has been denial of democracy as well. Who is responsible, who is not responsible, it's not the question. The question is the very democratic frame of the country, the republican frame of the country has been undermined. But today it is qualitatively different what happened in last year, 5th of August. It has been bulldozed. It's not the question of, you see, whether anybody can take Kashmir, territory and all that. It's not the question of controlling the territory, which I believe that Indian Republic has sufficient strength to protect the state and the territory. For the people, what about the Republic stands? It's of the common people. After 1 year of what happened last year, what is the state of affairs now in Jammu and Kashmir? Simple communication. Our Prime Minister is talking high about digital. What about this digital integration with digital India? If terrorism has been controlled, as is such the government of India today, you're reluctant to bring the communication system just elsewhere in. You have some specific concern for the people of Jammu. Why are being Jammu people punished? Or what? The second thing is, our friend, very, very seasoned, senior friends, right now, Radha Kumar has explained it in detail. What was the necessity of going for delimitation in pandemic, constituting a commission? The government of India has no time for some relief to those who have lost their jobs. The day-to-day workers in Jammu, in Kashmir, in Leh and Kargil as well. You don't have the time. You don't have time to provide certain important facilities to our health workers. PPE, you don't have sufficient resources to provide or time available to provide oxygen to the hospitals. My friend, while as you have enough, the administration has enough time to go for new laws and regulations like delimitation commission. As he rightly put it, I was the member of the assembly when we debated over this issue, and there was almost a unanimous opinion in the House that we must go at the level of the national procedures and processes. It will happen in 2026 after the census operation is completed. So same must be the treatment given to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Why are you in haste? What about this domicile law? What is this? You are talking about 35A. There may be certain shortcomings. I don't deny. I don't deny that the political leadership of Jammu and Kashmir, we the legislature, we should have understood or taken care of the legitimate shortcomings, legitimate grievances of our population, some sections of our population. We have not done enough. I do accept my responsibility as a citizen, as a former legislator. But nevertheless, you can't bulldoze the entire structure on which the relationship is built. Now, you are domicile law. I want to remind them how it emerged
through the notifications issued by whom? Not by any so-called Kashmiri ruler, but Maharaja Hari Singh in 1927 and 1932. What exactly is the spirit of 35A? It is to provide the legal protection to what Maharaja Hari Singh did through notification of 1927 and 1932 regarding state subjects. I must just remind my friends elsewhere that it was the result of an agitation mostly initiated by educated Dogras in Jammu and educated Kashmiri Pandits from Kashmir, mostly. And Maharaja did a good thing. And why are you worried about Jammu and Kashmir having anything, something to protect their rights? What about 371? There are other provisions which guarantee certain rights to other sections of the population in Maharashtra, in the nearby state of in northeast states, Himachal Pradesh. You are taking oath on the floor of the house. Our home minister has been talking. We will never ever touch them. But why are you so much in a hurry to remove anything which is justifiable, which provides some relief to the people of Jammu and Kashmir? Look too, it's not a question of Kashmir. Ask the general masses there, ask the younger generation there, how much disappointed they feel about such steps. Ask the lay people, it's not a question of Kargil, they are Muslims. What about lay? They are upset because they feel worried about their land, about the protection of their employment, about the protection of their culture as well. Because you have worked in haste. You did not discuss these issues when you were in power in Jammu and Kashmir as well. You were holding the power, a coalition government was there, and the same government led by Mr. Modi was there in Delhi, as rightly put by my friend, esteemed friend Kapil Kak Sahab. We were having Atalji for full 5 years. And at that point of time, National Conference was part of the government. Umar was in the ministry. Why didn't you initiate? I know, I being a lone member in the House for quite some time from CPIM, I raised many issues. I raised certain issues which were rejected, which were not accepted at the time of introduction itself. BJP was having members, sometimes 11, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, whatever. And even in the previous assembly, the number was big. If the government did not, why did not some leader from the BJP introduce some private members' bill, some resolution moved so that the suffer 2Gs can be discussed? Didn't you do? Why didn't you? I'm just asking you, leave aside Kashmir and Jammu, Ladakh. Why Prime Minister of India did not convene the meeting of other political parties, leaders, before they took a decision? It was not an ordinary decision. So why didn't you consult the opposition? After all, they are segments of the same democratic quality of our country. They have been in power in Delhi, they have been in power they continue to be in power in different states. The issues are not concerned about one party. I don't buy this story that one party has emerged all of a sudden. Issues of our relationship bulldoze the very and strong country, and federalism and pluralism. Enough is enough. I appeal to the people of the country. I appeal to everybody. I appeal to everybody. Please, as a citizen, not as CPIM. It's not a question of my party, your party. It's the question of our country. It's the question of here in Kashmir, our people. Anniversary is being celebrated by some people about that, scrapping it, doing away with everything. Now, why Kashmir is under corruption? why Kashmir is under restrictions even today. You are talking about normalcy. Is this symbolizing the new mode of normalcy?
Right. Mr. Tarigami, thank you for taking this part. I want to now, I think we need to start, I think Mishra is also going to be pointing out that we need to start wrapping up this discussion now because we've gone very over time. Now, what I was hoping we can hear from all of you is a set of closing comments on this on what's been going on in Kashmir, what the people have been going through over the last year, and how that needs to be taken forward. We've heard a little of that from Kapil Kaksab already. So I'd like to start with Radha ma'am. If you can take us through some of the, because especially since you've done the report on the for the Forum on Human Rights in Jammu and Kashmir, you've already signposted some of those points at the start of this discussion. So if you can pick up some of the key issues, which, like if you had to pick three key issues which have to be picked up and dealt with, and which require things to be done over the next, immediately coming forward, so that this situation can go ahead. Could you take us through three headline points which you think we can take, and we'd like to then sort of take that to the other panelists as well. So to start with you, Radha.
Quickly, all of you.
Yeah.
I'll try to bundle them together. I mean, first of all, restore 4G. Roll back this blanket application of 144. Allow newspapers to publish opinion pieces that debate what has been going on over the past year. Allow peaceful protest if that is required, if people want to do it. If parties want to find ways of talking about now their party political issues, help them, facilitate them. That's one bundle. Release everyone who is still under detention. Do not use the Public Safety Act as a mechanism of silencing dissent, which is what is going on. And by the way, a little aside, I don't know how many of you know, but Mr. Tarigami was, I think, the only MLA ever to try to introduce, I think he introduced it as a private member's bill, to amend the PSA to rid it of its more draconian provisions. We too, by the way, had suggested that in our interlocutors report, and unfortunately, we were not heard on that one. All ongoing cases of habeas corpus, bail, speedy trial, and so on, resolve them speedily. So that's that one bundle of things. The other is, we find from other reports that Kashmir has less mobile telephony access. And I have a feeling this is going to apply even more to Jammu than to the Valley, than the rest of the country, which to me actually came as quite a surprise, considering that the levels of poverty are very different. But where a report found that 41% of our country, children are able to access online materials or classes. In Kashmir, in Jammu and Kashmir, it was 25%. So reforms of that sort empower teachers to be able to conduct their classes, and definitely fulfill your obligations to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ordered that children in detention, of course, had to be free, but that they should have psychotherapy services, and so on. We have no information on any of that. Then come the much bigger political issues. It does seem to me, I saw that Muzaffar Beg had an article today saying that why doesn't the government ask the Supreme Court to hear the pending petitions against what they have done on 370 and reorganization more speedily. Now, there's no question that this has been pending for 1 year. in that 1 year, uh, the government has taken all sorts of steps to implement. They have implemented the Reorganization Act through, for example, the new domicile rules and so on. They're implementing all their quote unquote integration measures. We have very high levels of counterinsurgency operations. And yet the challenges are pending. And we had asked for a stay for precisely this reason. Please determine the constitutional validity of these acts before you allow them to be implemented on the ground. It has not
Perfect. So
happened.
that's the perfect place to stop you off there, Mr. Sharda. I think the issue here is there are reports which have come out which clearly talk about the losses to business, the lack of access for education for children, and of course everyone knows about the detentions. Now, do you think these are issues which now need to be addressed, and how do you think that we can take this issue up further? Do you think the situation needs to stay as it is when it comes to all of these, whether it's the internet ban, whether it's the detentions, whether it's all of these, or how do we take things forward in Kashmir? Because these are things which have lasted there for a year now and are starting to become obviously long-term problems.
I have been called many names in this debate, and I don't think this debate has taken anything anywhere. So whether my views makes any sense to you or not, since I've been asked to go the debate, I have never seen such a one-sided debate where you have 40 minutes for the one side and 10 minutes for the other side. I only found Mr. Tariq most reasonable person coming from Jammu Kashmir who had very valid points. I appreciate his points. I also appreciate that he admitted that the entire 370 charade under which the Jammu Kashmir was being ruled by the valid politicians needed to be addressed. Whether the BJP made a mistake or whether he did rise on time, everything is right, but time has passed. So we cannot now say we should have done at least, but he agrees that there are mistakes on their side also. Point one. Point two. Mainstream politicians suck. They no more are validated. They could not work without security cover. They have no validation now in the Kashmir Valley. We need new proper politicians. They need to be protected. The block level elections was one stage, and the panchayat pramukh was killed. BJP leaders who have joined the BJP Kashmir Valley, they have been threatened and killed. So we need more protection to new age politicians who will change the narrative. This old the very wise foxes will never change the narrative because that is how they thrive with taking money from Delhi and eating the money and blaming it on center. So unless these so-called mainstream politicians are dumb and new politicians are protected and they are nurtured to take the politics in Kashmir Valley forward, and let us clearly understand that Kashmir was not the only thing. Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh. They were the three regions where Ladakh and Jammu always got the wrong end of the stick. Unless we agree to that, unless we accept this, no other solution will work because keeping on crying about valley areas where we are wrong, it only depends on bandwidth. I'm sorry. That's not the way forward.
Take for example, here is now a procedure set in. That is, you are arrested without knowing the charges against you. I was under detention, under preventive detention, PDA. I was Public Safety Act was first during Sheikh Saab's period. I was the first victim. But even then, I was given the charges, the grounds of the detention. Today, I don't know. My personal security personnel, they came to me and told me you can't move out. I told them why. Said because the government wants you to be here. So the question is, give us that much of right to know about what we have done. And that's why I appeal to you, please, one demand, which I think must be common to all of us, and we hope the citizens of this great country will support us, that is restore democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. I'm not, and then integrate it with Indian democracy. This is my appeal to you and through you to everybody who is listening to us. Second point is, you see, as far as the question of what has happened, where is the economy? Go to Jammu, go to Kashmir. People are crying for It is not because of pandemic. Pandemic has added to our miseries, no doubt, as in the rest of the country. But we have been under lockdown since 5th of August. Ask those who are associated with the business in the state, Jammu, yeah, what has happened to them? The students, proper communication network, who are online. These are the issues. Kashmiri, from Jammu, from Ladakh, and religion, the countrymen to raise their voice in what the Constitution of India has.
On that note, I think I would like to extend a very warm note of thanks to all the panelists. I mean, the debate got heated, more than once, but I'm glad that we could bring it back on track. Yes, Mr. Sharda, you are mute. You're mute.
My request is next time try to have a more balanced panel. You cannot have a highly one-sided panel. When one person is shouted on as a liar and useless fellow or below level, that is not the way to conduct debates. And I'm sorry, I was very elected the way these people abused me and insulted me as if they know everything. Nobody has any voice or view. This is a horrible kind of level of sophistry, a horrible kind of level of super seriousness about others.
No,
Let me tell you, I have also studied all these issues. Miss Radha, enough is enough. Please.
Enough is enough from
Please,
you.
enough is enough. I don't even want to talk to somebody who doesn't have the Jammu Kashmir tries to be scholar on that. Please. I am leaving the debate. I don't want to debate this lady who thinks she only has a right to speak.
You please look within yourself before you
look
start.
at how you destroyed the entire narrative Jammu Kashmir. How your interlegal report was dumped by your people who sent you. So understand what is the value of the interlegal report. Because it is pennies worth.
There you are, back to your personal
accusation. Yes, and that was your left party who dumped it.
Who can only throw personal accusations.
Because you did this. You started never allowed me to complete a sentence. I'm sorry, you never allow anybody to speak. That is the tolerance level you have.
Please.
Okay. Can we play a short documentary that actually, instead of me extending a vote of thanks or anything, because I don't think it makes any sense now. I would like my colleague Debayan to play a short clip from the documentary that we have made on Kashmir, where we have some voices from the ground and what they feel about their situation one year after the changes were made to the status of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Debayan, would you please like to play?
01000 इसका मतलब यह है दोनों स्विचेस ऑन होंगे सिर्फ और सिर्फ उसी सूरत में अब उतना क्यों वेट करेंगे निकालो मैं बताऊंगा आप कौन से समय प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ रैंडम वेरिएबल I am really sorry to say that education has terribly suffered. Since August 5, 2019, if you confirm my stats, we are not able to provide 15 working days to our students. क्योंकि इनकी कोई लिमिट ही नहीं है यहाँ पे otherwise वाले सारे values इसमें आ जाएंगे. You cannot tolerate, you cannot bear this trauma of your students, the depression levels, they are suffering mentally. Strikes, curfew.
And then after that, I had to sell my ferens, my winter collection in the market. I was not able to send that to the people who are not in Kashmir, because I have many customers who are not in Kashmir, they're outside Kashmir. So to connect with them, it got very difficult for me. I got into issues with my dealers who are in other places than Kashmir. They were like, ma'am, you're not able to pay on time. We are not able to connect with you. We are not able to contact you, because there was no internet and there was no mobile service.
We were promised that everything will improve. I am sorry to say, is this improvement? Before 370 our students were secured that we will have good government jobs and there is little competition and we have a reservation. Now the competition has worsened and very difficult for a student to know that he is unable to get admission at National Institute of Technology, at some local institute, because the reservation is for the students from outside the valley.
There is a new domicile law under which that there are certain criteria who can get a domicile residentship in Kashmir, and people have apprehensions that it is to change the demography of the region.
We used to get a hope if situation becomes bad, we used to think that no, after 2-3 months it will become better. But at the moment, I don't find anything. We are broken at the moment.
तब से बिल्कुल ही पीछे हो गए बिकॉज 4-5 मंथ्स आपको पता है अभी कोविड का ये चल रहा है, पैंडेमिक चल रहा है, फिर भी इकॉनमी एंड ऑल अदर थिंग्स जो भी दुनिया में वो एकदम पीछे आ गई थी, बट वो पूरी दुनिया की बात थी. अभी यहाँ पे क्या था कि बस 4-5 महीने बस हम दुनिया से पीछे रहे और दुनिया तो हमारे लिए नहीं रुकी आगे. सो हम ऑलरेडी पता नहीं कितने साल पीछे थे और हम और पीछे हो गए.